This tutorial is going to show you how to print either plans or objects that you have drawn or opened in AutoCAD. To start this tutorial, I've opened up the Wilhelm or the 01 Wilhelm file, the same one that we used in the first tutorial. I'm simply going to show you how to print some files, how to print this file or parts of it using the print command. In order to print something in AutoCAD after you've opened up your file, you simply go File, Print, or actually in AutoCAD it's called Plot. So if I click on the File command here, click on the Plot window, that opens up this plotting dialog box. The first thing you need to do before you change any settings is select which printer you're going to be using. If you're printing something in color, you can select the 107 color laser. If you're printing something large format, like a poster size, like for example if you're printing your floor plans to scale, you could select the plotter in the back of the room. In this case, for most things, we're going to be using the 107 black laser. I'm going to select that. Once I've selected the printer, I need to make sure I select the paper size. For the 107 black printer, we only have one paper size available, which is letter. We could also use legal, which is 8.5 by 14 versus 8.5 by 11. So if you're using the 107 color printer, that has 11 by 17 capability. We can select 11 by 17. If we were printing from the plotter in the back, you want to obtain some further instructions from me because it's rather expensive to print with that, but we can use larger paper sizes as well. Next, you have to pick what do you want to print. You have a couple of options. If you select display, display is going to print exactly what you see on your display window. To the same zoom and everything that's displayed on there will print. I'll show you some of the other options in a little bit. The next thing you have to do is select your scale. Typically, we would select the scale from the drop-down menu. So say you were trying to print your floor plans to scale. Remember in the beginning of the to the beginning of the tutorials when I explained that whenever you draw something in AutoCAD, you always draw it full size. Well, this is because when you print it, you allow AutoCAD, or you select the scale based on the size of the drawing and the size of the paper you're printing to. So for anything that we're going to be printing quarter scale, we're probably going to be using the large plotter in the back because the 8.5 by 11 printer won't be large enough to accommodate that. So for many things that we're just submitting and turning in, I'm not too concerned with you printing it to scale unless I ask you to do so specifically. So for the most part, you're just going to hit Fit to Paper by selecting the checkbox here. Next, you almost always want to make sure you hit Center the Plot, and then before you even think about hitting OK to print it, you always want to do a print preview to make sure that your settings are correct. So simply click on the preview button. It'll take a second for it to open, and this will always give you a pretty good idea of what your actual print is going to look like. So as soon as this processes here, this should open. So here's my print preview of what I'm going to print. You can zoom in and zoom out just like you would in AutoCAD with the scroll wheel, and notice this is a lot to try and fit on one page. Also, it shows up in black and white because the printer is formatted for black and white. Now say I wanted to tweak this a little bit to use the page size a little bit better. There's a pretty big margin around here. So what I can do is I can manually tweak it to make it slightly larger. So if I go back here and uncheck this Fit to Paper, and I change this units, which was automatically calculated before to fit the paper size, if I make this number a little bit smaller, maybe 170, and now I try a preview again, it's going to say the annotation scale does not match the plot scale. Usually click Continue to skip that. Now you'll notice that it fits the paper a little bit better. I probably could have gone even smaller. Perhaps instead of 170, I could have got away with 150. If you did something way too small, say like 120, and did a preview of that, you'll notice it's way off the page. Now this is why it's so important to always do a print preview before you print, because here you just saved yourself a piece of paper, because now it's obvious that it's not going to fit on the page, so you'd probably have to go back and adjust your settings. So if you always do a print preview before you print, it'll save yourself the trouble of having to print it again and also wasting paper. So I'm going to close out of this print preview and show you a few more options here. Now, if I wanted to, instead of printing display, say I wanted to print only a portion of what was on the screen, say just this section view right here. What I can do instead of selecting display is, well, I could zoom into that section so that's only displayed on the screen. But an easier thing to do is only select, if you select window. In this case here, if I select window, sometimes you have to do it twice, it's going to, now you can actually draw a box over the area that you want to print. So in this case, I'm going to zoom into this fireplace elevation here, and I'm going to draw a rectangle over the part that I want to print. So now I can do fit to paper again to let it calculate the approximate size, and if I hit preview now, you'll see that only what I selected is going to print, and this time it did a pretty good job of scaling it to fit the page. Of course, anything you print should always have a title block on the corner, so you want to make sure that you draw on a title block somewhere, typically with your name, date, period, and scale of what you're printing. And I'm going to close out of this title block, out of that preview, and show you one more thing. Now, if I wanted to print something to scale, if I uncheck fit to paper here, typically we want to use a custom scale, such as maybe 1/4 inch equals a foot. So if I select 1/4 inch equals a foot and hit preview again for the same object, you'll see that the object turned out a little bit smaller than necessary. So probably I could have used a bigger scale, maybe even 1/2 inch equals a foot, and that would double the size of this. And when you actually go to print this out, it would be to that scale of 1/2 inch equals a foot, provided you drew the object full size when you first laid it out. And then from here, if you would actually put your architect scale on it, it should match up exactly with the dimensions that you drew from the beginning. Now if I close this back, this will go back here to the print preview window. Many times I may ask you to, instead of printing a drawing to an actual piece of paper, I may ask you to print it to a file. If you print it to a file, typically it's going to be in the format of a PDF. If you go to your printer drop-down window here, you should have a printer called Qt PDF Writer, like CUTE. In this case, I don't have it installed on mine, but I have Adobe PDF. Again, you would probably have Qt PDF Writer. So if I click on Adobe PDF and I select that printer, I can use all the same settings I did before, just as if I was printing it to regular paper. Instead, I want to make the scale a little bit larger, so I'm going to use a 1/2 inch. And now if I use a preview, notice a couple of things. First off, it's a little bit larger because I printed it half inch equals a foot versus 1/4 inch equals a foot scale, and it's also in color. Since I'm printing this to a PDF now, which is just a file, it can easily be in color. But notice though that the yellow font colors that were used in this file are very difficult to see on the white paper. Keep in mind that something that contrasts well with a black background in AutoCAD typically is not going to be very easily visible on white paper. We don't have any black paper to print to, so you always want to make sure that whatever colors you pick when you go to print them, unless you're printing black and white, that you can see them on white paper, because this yellow is pretty much illegible, invisible on the white paper. So now I'm actually going to go ahead and print this, since this is an actual file instead of actually printing it. So then this print thing is going to process here, and then notice that now this file window pops up. This is essentially just like you're saving it. Notice the file type is a PDF. So here I can name it my file, select my P drive where I want to save it, save the file, and then if I were to submit it, I could actually just email it to the instructor, put it in the Dropbox, or do anything else I would want to do with it. And it just generates a PDF file versus actually printing it. So I'm just canceling it because I don't actually want to create the file. So this pretty much wraps up the printing tutorial. Again, if you don't remember anything from this lesson, make sure you always do a print preview before you print to save paper, and always check the settings always double check the settings, which can always be verified with a print preview. At this point in time, you should practice with this Wilhelm file, practice printing the entire display, zooming into different parts, and using the display, and also try printing different windows. Don't physically print them to the printer, stop at the print preview, or if you want to actually print them to a PDF, and then you can delete the file when you're done to save paper. If everybody practices just simply printing, we're going to generate a lot of wasted paper.